Hawkeye fans, do you enjoy this platform? Do you like having content here on YouTube and being able to watch live shows and recorded shows and long-form content, short-form content? Well, we certainly appreciate you being here. A couple of ways you can support the initiative here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. One simple way is by hitting the like button on this video and on every video and live stream we post. You can also subscribe, turn notifications on. You do that by clicking the little bell on the channel page or on this video, below this video, next to subscribe. That is much appreciated. And you can join our show. You can become a premium member. You can donate by means of PayPal, Venmo, Cash App. If you want to make a one-time credit card donation, click on the PayPal link. All of those are ways you can support the work being done here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. And don't forget about our kind sponsors, our great sponsors. They're all listed in our description. So we're here today to talk about the recent news that former Iowa tight end Gavin Hoffman has signed on to play for Eli Drinkwitz and the Missouri Tigers. This is an interesting one. And as you've probably figured out, I have committed to basically talking about every Iowa transfer, both in and out of the program, right? Guys coming in, guys leaving. And this is one that surprised me when the news initially broke. It happened here, a week into spring practice. He entered the portal, and it was last week that he initially committed and eventually signed. I'll give you a bit of an overview on Gavin Hoffman. I'm not going to review everything I talked about if you missed my video. Initially talking about this news of Hoffman entering the portal, you can find it up here in the corner of your screen. But he's a 6'4", 6'5" prospect, former four-star prospect, who was either the best player or the second best player in the entire state of Kansas in 2024. And there were a lot of people who thought, hey, this guy could be the next Noah Fant, TJ Hawkinson, George Kittle, Sam Laporte. I mean, he's got some of those intangibles coming out of high school. He was top 250 nationally. And he's a guy, when you look at his high school tape, he looks like a receiver in a tight end's body. And his high school did a lot of different things with him on offense. And it's one of the reasons he was so highly regarded. But it's interesting. He commits to Missouri. Missouri, some strong connections there with the Hoffman family. One obvious one is the fact that he was recruited by Missouri, took a couple of visits there, including an official. And it sounds like he participated in at least one camp there at Mizzou. And his cousin is current Indiana Fever guard Sophie Cunningham. Very interesting. It sounds like maybe Sophie Cunningham, not the only one in that family that is from the area. And Sophie Cunningham actually was born in Columbia, Missouri, went to high school in Columbia, and then played college basketball in Columbia. She was just inducted here in the last few days, I believe, into the Missouri Sports Hall of Fame. So that's quite an honor. And it sounds like maybe Sophie Cunningham alluded to this move potentially happening before it actually happened. Not before Hoffman left Iowa, but before he committed and signed to play for Eli Drinkwitz and Missouri. Missouri was his only visit out of the portal, but according to his agent, yes, he has an agent like most of these kids do nowadays, he received an overwhelming number of calls and offers his first day in the portal from schools across the SEC and the rest of the Power Four. This is from Alexander Essex telling Rivals. Essex is Hoffman's agent. But Essex added, after a few conversations with the coaching staff at Mizzou, especially Coach Cato and head coach Drinkwitz, Gavin has decided to take one visit during the transfer period and will be on campus at Missouri on Thursday, and he later committed and eventually signed. So very interesting. I don't know why he left. I mean, was he just not happy with the fact that he hadn't broken through? Remember, this was just year 2 for Gavin Hoffman. He didn't break through in year 1. Clearly, Iowa liked him, but rarely do tight ends play their true freshman season. I mean, the last guy I can even recall playing extensively in his second year would have been TJ Hawkinson back in 2017. I believe he was a redshirt freshman that year. But that's rare that would occur that way. And as I've talked about in recent videos, guys nowadays are going to jump to different schools earlier in their careers if they're not sniffing playing time and they were highly regarded in high school, because a lot of these schools are going to be able to look back at they're going to defer back to high school film and say, hey, he's got 3-4 years ahead of him of eligibility. We'll take it based on what we know, based on what we saw in high school, etc., even if maybe he was struggling to gain ground at the respective school where he was transferring out of. So I mentioned Hoffman, a really good pass catcher in high school, set a record for receiving touchdowns at his high school. And since he's been at Iowa, he's reportedly added about 20 pounds. I know he posted some measurements on his vertical jump and his 40-yard dash time. And I did take a few minutes. I don't normally do this. I did take a few minutes to go listen to a few Missouri talking heads after this commitment occurred, after Hoffman announced he would be transferring to Missouri. And one thing, it reminded me why I don't go watch a lot of other podcasters and people. I'm not going to name specific people, but I just have come to find out over the course of time that there are a lot of people in the industry that don't really know what they're talking about. Like I say, I would never point anybody out in that regard, but I heard one podcaster make a comment about how Gavin Hoffman was leaving Des Moines and heading to Columbia. There's another guy that was making fun of the Iowa offense and basically insinuating that it didn't make much sense that Hoffman would want to go to Iowa in the first place. Of course, failing to mention, remember, or even know that Iowa has been tight end U and was tight end U even during the Brian Ferentz era, and one could say especially during the Brian Ferentz era. But anyways, as I was listening to some of these talking heads, there's a lot of excitement from the fan base, I can tell you that, about Hoffman coming in and having 4 years of eligibility remaining. It sounds like their best tight end, Brett Norfleet, really the only sure tight end on that roster right now, has struggled to stay healthy. But these two guys are similar, strong pass-catching tight ends. Jude James is a guy who's added some weight, and it sounds like Drinkwitz likes him in that program. Jordan Harris, Vince Brown, also options. Vince Brown transferred this past offseason in from Colorado State. Harris is more of a blocking tight end. So at least the talking heads out there, they think that Hoffman could end up being a top 2 tight end. And so he wasn't going to be a top 2 this year at Iowa. I mean, barring some injuries. I mean, it's Zach Ortworth, it's Addison Estringa, and then Hayden Large has operated some as a fullback, H-back type of guy, but he's listed as a tight end. And frankly, I don't know that Hoffman was ahead of Michael Burt, and they got some good tight ends coming in this year. So, a number of reasons, factors that could have went into his decision to leave. I know it's frustrating to fans. There is rumbling out there. I mentioned what Alex Essex, Hoffman's agent, had to say about some SEC and Big Ten schools. A few of those schools reportedly included Auburn, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas, Tennessee. Just rumblings out there, nothing official as it relates to offers. It is interesting that Hoffman didn't bother to visit any other schools. If he had offers from all of these big-time programs, potentially like a Texas and an OU and even Auburn, you're not going to go visit. You're not going to see what they have to offer. I find that a little strange. If he was such a huge, avid Missouri guy and the family was all Mizzou, all in on Mizzou, why didn't he go there initially out of high school? I don't have the answer to that. It does make me wonder. Of course, there's so much going on behind the scenes, and tampering really isn't tampering anymore. And I'm not trying to imply that Missouri did tamper with Hoffman, but I do find it interesting that Iowa did play Missouri this past year in the Music City Bowl. You have the Sophie Cunningham cousin connection. He didn't take any other visits. I can tell you on good authority that some of his teammates were quite surprised when they got this news. They did not see this coming. And like I said, just the fact that he had reported interest from some big-time schools and only wanted to go to Missouri, maybe it's the family connection. Maybe that's all it is. But, hey, who cares? I mean, really, people who want to cry about tampering, it's happening everywhere. It seems like now. It's why it's almost humorous that Iowa kind of got busted, slapped on the wrist for the whole Caden Proctor thing when Proctor came back to Iowa briefly before leaving Iowa again. And then Proctor, obviously was talking to Alabama people and then left again. Anyways, all that drama, all that saga. But it's just funny when people complain about tampering because it's everywhere now. Not that it wasn't happening before, but it's happening now more than ever. But I do think it's kind of interesting, this Gavin Hoffman thing. And, hey, I wish the kid the best. I got nothing against him. Hey, if he doesn't want to be here, you don't want to be at Iowa, then leave. Go to Missouri. Like if he got tampered with or Joe Blow got tampered with, let him leave. There are other guys who have left over the past year that I can tell you on a good authority were tampered with, and that's happening everywhere, and I don't think you can lose sleep over it because if you did, you'd be a very tired man. So, folks, that's the latest. Gavin Hoffman transferring to Missouri, a place that I think a lot of people expected him to go to in the first place, but he'll be there now and somewhat closer to home, I guess, in a sense. I don't know how close Columbia is to Overland Park, Kansas, but probably not much different from Iowa City. But we'll see. It'll be interesting to see what his next 4 years look like. Would he play? Maybe could he play as a redshirt freshman? That will be interesting to see as well. Folks, appreciate you tuning in. Like I mentioned at the outset of the video, one big way you can support is by hitting that like button. Share the video out on social media. If you're enjoying the content, other Hawkeye people will as well. And we'll talk to you tomorrow.